So while waiting for other people to show up, are there any questions left over from last time, or questions on the labs, or anything like that that we can try to work through?
Yeah, I was having trouble with the list lab.
Okay.
From the first week.
Okay.
I think the only issue is with the 4 slices of cheese, what you're trying to do is nest on the list inside of the list item.
Yeah.
And so you need to, you're closing it there, but really you want to close it at the end of the next list. So like if we put, delete that, and then put it on line 8. So after the UL.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because what you're doing is you're putting on an entire list inside of a single list item. So you'll see it when you make the change. So just right after. Yeah. So like if you go, so we do want to, if you go look at this, you'll see there's a difference. Do the HTTP server. See how it put the list inside of the list item? Yeah. See how it's like, it's creating like an outline. Okay. Yeah, so that's what it's doing.
Okay. On the CSS fundamental side,
Yep.
when I open the CSS file, is it supposed to be completely blank?
I don't think so.
Because I put all of that in, it was nothing.
Oh, it was blank. Okay, that is totally possible.
Okay. Because this is the one where, so it's down here, fundamental side.
Yeah.
But so you've got your index and it's got all this stuff here.
Yep.
And you were styling the page with the, what's it called, the realty group or whatever.
Okay.
So when it went here, everything was empty.
Okay.
And up until now, there's like some kind of guidance happening. Here.
Yeah, sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. As the class goes on, there's less and less.
Cool.
So,
Right.
How'd your brother do?
My brother.
Yeah. Was it?
He won the first game, but
Okay.
lost the second.
Okay.
I was
Well.
just up there for match 1.
Yeah. That's pretty cool though, man.
Yeah, it was awesome. But get up there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hot. That's hot though. I imagine, huh?
So hot.
Yeah.
Especially in doubles, it's just 2 sets and then 1 super tiebreak. Whereas in singles,
Yeah.
5 sets.
Yeah. So.
It goes to that, and then your next game is going to be tough.
Oh, absolutely. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it's one day.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
I know how to run the server and get the
Okay.
to open it, but when it says open index HTML,
Uh-huh.
what do they mean?
So if they're saying, I'd have to look at the instructions exactly. They may be saying open index.html in your IDE.
Okay. I was just not sure if they didn't say in your IDE. So I was like, do they mean to run the server? Or do they mean to
They probably meant in your IDE because when you go to the URL that you get when you run HTTP server, it will load index.html by default.
Okay.
So I would assume that that's what they're talking about.
Who did your brother play? First round.
And so they're talking about like your local ID on your computer.
They're talking about the one that's in LearnCo. Yeah, so if you,
Okay.
like if I go to here, let me go to one of the, if this one has. Yeah, so they're just saying like click on index.html here. And then change. All right. So we're going to make a little change to the agenda. We started last time talking about how to develop on our local machines. We created a project. And because we did that, I think it's valuable for you guys to start using version control so that you can keep track of all of the changes that you're making, and you'll be able to store all of your stuff up on the cloud and on your computer so we don't have to worry about accidentally losing anything. So we're going to, before we continue on with the HTML and CSS, we're going to start talking about Git. Git, is anybody familiar with Git? You've probably heard the term, right? GitHub is something that is pretty commonly thrown around, especially as you start to get into development and technology. The Git came out of what used to be SVN, subversioning, which was essentially a file base that existed out on a network. In many cases, it was just on an intranet as opposed to the internet, and people would store their code in one place. And what you would do is, as you made changes, you would check your code in to that SVN, and then that way everybody could get the newest and latest and greatest code, and everybody could keep the one source of truth code base up to date, so you can start to work on teams this way. Well, that's okay, but it had a lot of flaws, and one of the biggest issues, I only used this for a very brief time period, but one of the biggest issues was you'd end up in conflict, where you would make a change and somebody else would make a change, and you try to check out that same set of code and you couldn't because it didn't know how to resolve those issues. So Git takes a slightly different approach. It does some really cool things. It's incredibly fast. It does a very good job of finding where those differences are. Frequently, it can just auto-merge those changes. If one person makes a change to a file and another person does, it tries to merge those together. And it gives a really nice interface for when it can't resolve those conflicts to let you be able to solve the problem. Today, we're going to walk through the process of getting you guys set up. I'm going to set you up on GitLab. This is a personal preference, but hopefully it does a couple of things. One, it'll expose you that Git is not just GitHub. It can be on GitLab or Bitbucket or several other entities that you can use for this. It is just the place that you put your code out on the cloud. We're going to use GitLab. We use it at my workspace. As you begin to expand as a programmer, there's a lot of additional tool sets that are available there. One is you can have as many free private repositories as you want to. On GitHub, you can have as many public, but that means anybody can see all of your code. So if you're interested in making your own little code base and creating your own business, having a private repository is useful, and it's free on GitLab. Another benefit of GitLab is that you can group things, so it has a folder structure. GitHub doesn't give you that, so as you have more and more code, you're going to want to be able to organize it, and you can't do that on GitHub. And the third and biggest reason actually is they have a really easy to use, as you become a stronger developer, what's called continuous integration, continuous development pipeline, so where essentially you can say, hey, whenever I commit something to master, I want you to do this set of commands, which usually includes things like run my test, deploy it to production, run some integration tests afterwards. So there's some cool tool sets, and it's all free. So we're going to use GitLab. So to do that, if you can go to gitlab.com on your computer. And you're going to see something like this. You can use your GitHub login. You can just click on the GitHub thing to log you in. That'll help try and find a username for you too, based on your GitHub account. Go ahead and sign in there. And then I'm going to go Git. Let's go. And then, so has everybody gotten logged into GitLab? All right, so the next step is to take the code that I just posted in Slack, and we're just going to run that in the terminal. So you're just going to copy, so replace the word email with your actual email. which you can do by opening up Atom and just pasting what I put into Slack into Atom. Josh, I don't think you got set up with Atom probably. You do have it. Nope. Yep. Yep. That's fine. Yeah. So if you just paste it in there, then you can easily change email to be your email.
You said put this in Atom or the terminal?
Well, we're gonna put it in the terminal, but only after you replace email. So just a second ago, this looked like this.
Okay.
I want to replace email with your actual email, and then you'll copy this into your terminal.
So well, in Atom, are we like creating a new project or anything?
It's just a place to edit the text.
Okay.
That's all. You can open up Microsoft Word for all I care. It's just so we just need to change email to be your email. That's all we're trying to do. And you can't do it in Slack because it's. So what we're doing here, what this code is doing, is it's going to create a unique identifier for your computer. It creates a secret key and a public key. You can take that public key and put it on things like GitLab and actually lots of other things. And what it does is it allows your computer to communicate with those external services, and it knows who you are. So it authenticates you as being that person. So we're going to generate the key, and then we're going to copy the public key, and we're going to go put it on GitLab. So when you get to this point, let me know. When you go to do this first line here, it's going to ask you some questions. So it'll say enter file in which to save the key, just press enter. Then it's going to ask you for a password, just press enter. Then it's going to ask you to confirm the password, just press enter. Don't actually put a password in. Creating passwords is a problem.
Are we doing that in GitLab or?
You're doing this in your terminal. So just open up your terminal and anywhere in there. And this stuff feels technical, and it largely is technical. We're only going to do this one time. Once we get you set up, things are going to get a lot easier. So we're just doing this to make your life easy. You should be able to do the exact same thing on a PC. I don't think there's going to be an issue.
Okay, so
I have a really dumb question. How do I open the terminal again?
Just hit the search thing.
Yeah.
And then search for terminal.
Just for where mine says enter the file in which to save the key, after RSA doesn't have the colon in parentheses. I don't know if you added that or if that should be there.
Oh, so delete that. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So that's a good point. I didn't realize that was going to happen. Only copy the first line that I put in and enter that and press enter, and then go on to the next one, or it's going to try and create the repository in the wrong place. We can fix all this. So just copy that one. So the way to get back out of where you were. So in your case, actually, you can just delete this.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
I'll do exit out of the thing like that.
Control C. Control C.
Okay. So put the first line in again, or is it the...
You're done. You're good. Yeah. We're gonna print that out in just a second. I forget how to do that on PC.
What was the second benefit you mentioned for GitLab? You mentioned private repos.
Yep.
You can run test suites, etc. when you commit code. There's one other thing you mentioned.
Organization. So like there's groups. So you'll see if I go into groups, I have a bunch. And if they're just 5, there's folders. You can have as many as you want. You just can't do that on GitHub. PC cat core 1. So type. Yeah, so I think what you want to run, so do the second line of code that I put in there.
Okay.
And then I think you want to do type space instead of cat space, which I'll put the code.
okay, so we were.
So, or for a PC, it'll be. So those of you with Macs, after you've run through the commands here and you get your ID RSA, you should see something that looks like a square box with a bunch of crazy symbols. It's like alien looking stuff that exists on your terminal. If you've gotten there, then you're in a good spot.
Were we supposed to download something first? Or
No.
because it says not found.
And then you have to put a slide. I did, yeah.
So I see. So
I see it in here. Oh, right. Yeah. Okay, cool.
There's the crazy alien stuff.
You just keep putting in time.
I'm pressing up to go back and rerun. If you copy the second line of code that I put into Slack, or here, it's just
Type did not work for me, but should I try cat?
you can try cat. Yep.
It just says the syntax of the command is incorrect.
Okay. What about git dash content instead of cat?
Page. Real.
So we would get.
I got it.
So that's the.
I'll just do the first line first. You want to actually don't have a leave piece. So yeah, everything will be into the dollar. So not even. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it yeah.
This is like gen space dash T.
So we're just trying to fire and get that gen.
Oh, yeah. I think we.
Dash T. I'll get that.
Dash galaxy space and their email address. So then you can do the next line, SSH add, just copy and paste that. Here we go.
You should do the second line
Yep.
afterwards, after all that copy and paste.
Yep, do the second line there. You are very nearly there. So then all you have to do is just do cat. Well, here, do this first. SSH dash add
It should be.
Yes.
space tilde this thing, shift this thing, slash, yeah, dot SSH slash ID underscore RSA. Cool. And then do cat space tilde slash dot SSH slash ID underscore RSA dot pub dot PUB. Yeah. Dot PUB.
B.
Yep. Okay. We're gonna copy this.
And so what about the last time?
You copied both of the lines at once, and
Yeah.
it just put the file into the wrong place.
Okay, because I went back and did them one at a time
Uh-huh.
to that, so did it just not?
I'm not sure. Yeah, because it worked fine when I did. I don't know.
Okay.
It should have been fine.
This video.
Yes, that's what you want. Oh, because you don't have tilde. I bet that's what the actual problem is. Yeah, that's it. So this tilde, this little curly thing, means my home directory. Gotcha. So press enter. Yeah.
Full stack, because I copied both at one time.
Okay. So, could you redo it though?
Yes.
Okay. So,
doesn't it's like to press up a couple times. Yeah, press enter. Enter. Press up a couple times. There we go.
Cool.
Got it.
All right.
And then do cat space tilde slash dot ssh slash id underscore rsa underscore rsa. Oh, you did, sorry. Dot b. Sorry, we'll get dot.
What is the
So that's a public. So if you press enter there, you'll see it gives you back this long string. But that's the public version of this that we're going to put onto the GitLab. So thank you. Okay. Yeah. Okay, we'll get you got back up. So first thing is go to GitLab. .com. Yep. GIT. And you can sign in with your GitHub account. Yeah. And then open up your terminal. Oh, nice. You might actually have one of these types of. Do cat space tilde slash dot ssh slash id underscore tab. I'm sorry, just hit the tab key. Okay, so you know. Okay,
So I need to create this directory?
No, so if you delete all of that stuff, you just Slack open, you go to mine. So just copy, don't include the email $, so just SSH keygen TRSAC. I'm gonna put it in your terminal. And then space and type your email address. That's it. Yep. Enter. Enter. Okay. And then copy the next line that I have, SSH-add. Paste. Okay. And then copy that cat. So, all of you should have run that cat command or the type command, but essentially you should see something that looks like this. And if you copy everything from SSH-RSA through your email address, you should end up with something that looks like this. And then we're going to go to GitLab, click on your user profile, go to profile, I think, could be settings. Yep, sorry. Click on the user profile, click on settings, and then there's SSH keys over here on the left. You click on that, you're just going to paste that SSH RSA, it'll create a title for you. You're going to click Add Key.
You go back to that cache.
Yep.
Is it okay that my email is not dated?
Yes, technically that's okay.
Okay.
How about this? first part of your email address.
It chopped off hers.
And it looks like it has there on your screen when you pasted it into Adam, it came up full, I think. Unless I'm just not seeing the full screen.
It came up as what? I'm sorry.
It says it's got the full Samuel there, but back in terminal.
Oh, it has the whole thing here too. You just can't see. It's off the screen.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you want us to title this anything specific?
No, it doesn't matter.
Mine automatically did the email address.
Yeah, that's fine.
So if we just type in the missing bit of our email address, it should.
Don't do that.
Oh.
Yeah. So the key that gets generated, really what you're doing when you put the -C is it's encrypting your email address and creating a key for that email address.
Yeah.
It's just a nice, like, unique thing to use. It doesn't actually matter that it's your email address. It's just a commonly used. But don't change it because it'll change the key and that'll mess things up. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, just a second. Okay, so you said copy it, paste it in, and says
Yep.
please.
Yep, that looks good. And
We don't need to change the title?
no, you're good.
But do I want to change the title?
No, it doesn't really matter. It's just a reference for later.
Okay,
You'll probably never ever come back to this page again.
okay.
Like, that's we're just getting set up, and then you probably won't do this again for a year.
Is this, I've got a little,
Yeah.
okay, a little bar underneath.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine. Yeah, it's just the way they explain it. All right. So does everybody now have their key on GitLab? All right.
Oh my god.
Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do, so we have a place to play around, is I am going to go into a group that I created called Flatiron DC, which has some projects from the previous semester, which you'll be allowed to see. I think they're totally public anyway. In fact, you should be able to find my Flatiron DC group. So if you, here, let me do this. I'll create a new project. Learning Git. Did I already create this? It's possible.
Yeah, so,
So I created a new project called Learning Git 2. If you click on that URL, it should take you to it. You should see something that looks like this. Yeah? No? Yeah. Okay. All right. So once you're here, what you can see is we have this project. There's all kinds of cool stuff over here on the left that we mostly won't play with. We are going to follow some of the commands that they give us here that gets this started on our own computer. The first thing to do is copy this git config -- global user.name. You can just copy that whole line.
We can't see that.
Can you not see it?
It says the repository. This is empty.
Yes. Okay, great. Because I created the project, so it gives me the instructions, but not you. All right, so I'll copy and paste these into Slack again for you. So the only thing is, you again are going to have to change. Obviously, you don't want your username to be Sam Birk and your email to be samuel.birk@gmail.com. So you want to change those to be your actual username. Usually your username is, so like my username typically would be Samuel Birk. It's whatever your GitHub or your GitLab username is, which you can actually see probably right here. So it's minus the @sign, right? So really, my username should probably be Samuel Birk. And yours can be whatever you want. So yeah, just copy this again into Atom, change out the username and the email to be your username and email, and then copy and paste both of those lines into the terminal. To test that things work correctly, you should be able to run git config -- list, and it'll show you your username and your email. Should be updated.
So what are we putting that into?
So-
Git config where we.
So after you, yeah, so
Change it, yeah.
yeah, after you change it, just copy and paste it into the terminal and press enter.
What should it look like after you do that?
Okay, yep, that's all good. So do git space config space -- list, but no space after the two. Should see. Yeah, see there's your user.name. So yeah, it worked. So what that is doing is we're setting up our local computer to say when I'm using Git, I want to interact with it with this username and email. So when you create commits, when you change code, Git keeps track of who does what. It audits it. The way that it audits it is by looking at your username and your email here, and it's going to associate that with any changes that you make so that other team members can look and see, oh, Josh made these changes. It's his fault that everything's broken. It's actually it's actually called blame. Like git, the command is git blame. So yeah, it's it's pretty much what it's used for. Sometimes it's like who made this awesome code, but that is very rare. Okay, so does everybody get to hear? Everybody see this? No? Okay.
Install software again.
Oh, it's install software. So
It said that I need tools.
okay. Oh, you need an Xcode tool to do that. Yes, you're missing a press up a couple
That
times.
is correct.
Oh, okay. This is directed.
I actually get some different
Now you just go on a couple times.
results from that command.
Yeah, mine says like filter dot. Is that what this?
I'm getting a lot of core dot things.
Yes, that was good.
I guess, I think the key thing is we get the user email and using name.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you get
Okay.
space
I'm not sure what default.
GIT. Alright, pretty soon start this one.
Space.
Dash.
We're like three.
Yeah. I don't really have this computer says the computer.
Yeah.
Still doing the thing. Okay.
More developer tools were found.
Yeah, so you have to wait for that. We won't do anything until, it's okay, we'll get it the rest of the way on break. Okay. So, now we can start to do the fun stuff. You should at least see at the top, do you see something that looks like this? Where you'd have SSH and it says git at GitLab. Everybody see that?
Yep.
This little copy URL to clipboard thing that exists down here, you can click on that. It just copied that URL, right? And we can prove that. I can just paste it into Sublime or whatever, right? It's just copying the URL to your clipboard. Okay, so now we're going to go back into the terminal, and we want to go somewhere that makes sense on our computers to actually like put this new repository, this new project of ours. In the Mac world, typically you go somewhere like cd /. Let's just start there. That's your home directory. So this is the equivalent in the Finder to like the thing that has a home next to it. So in my case, it's Samuel Birk. If you, again, remember from a couple classes ago, if you do pwd, it'll show you you're in /user/Samuel Birk. Or in your case, it should be /user/ whatever the name of your computer is. Okay, we are then going to make a directory called code. So we have a common place to put our code. So make dir code, which I think I already have one, so it complains, but yours should be happy. If you then run ls, you should see that there's a code directory in the list.
So how do I make a code directory tilde?
So first cd tilde, enter,
Yep.
and then make dir mkdir
Yep.
space code, enter. And yours is going to be different.
Yeah, all mine is different.
Yeah, so the cdpc yeah, so I think it's not too far away. If you go back to that type command that you had before.
Sorry, I'm still past this one. So,
Okay, so you have to install Git is probably the first step.
you can just get to me on the break. That's
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I have had to solve this before, so it should be fine. But let's move on for now. Okay, so does everybody have their code directory? Okay. All right, so then we're going to cd into code. So if you cd code, and then if you run pwd, you should see now you're in user's name of your computer code. Now inside of here, we're going to go ahead and clone our actual repository. So if you've already clicked the copy button, you should be good. You might want to click it again just in case you've recopied something else. And what we're going to type is git space clone and then paste that URL. And then press enter, and when you do, you should see it say cloning into learning-git2. You appear to have cloned an empty repository.
I'm getting the authenticity of host GitLab can't be established.
So that's true for most of you because it's the first time you're ever trying to connect. Just type yes and press enter.
Can you appear to have cloned an empty repository?
That's what we're looking for. Yep. Let me know if this is not working for anybody.
I'm getting any response from that.
Probably won't get any response there. So that's good. You're in the right place. So then do make dir. So mkdir space code. Enter. File. So it's ls. Okay. rm space code.
Yeah.
Okay. Press up.
Sorry.
Good tilde. Okay. Press up. Before code, put a -rf space. cd space code. Okay. Yeah. pwd. Yeah. Okay. And then do git space code. And then go space, and then paste that URL. Control C. Press up. No, just press down. Git space clone. Let me go back to GitHub. Copy. Go back to space. Okay, and it's a yes. Okay. All right. So what we've done is we've cloned that repository down onto our local computers, and we can go take a look at that actually. So if I go to my home directory and Finder, and then I go inside of code. I have all kinds of stuff in here that you can ignore, but we should see a legacy or a learning-git2, which exists inside of there. There's nothing going on in there currently. We're going to make some stuff. So if you want to, you can, there's a couple ways of doing this. We basically want to open this in Atom. The easiest way is just to drag it and drop it on top. And you should see something like this. I'm using Sublime, but it should look pretty much the same. And then once you get there, we're all going to create a new file. We're going to save that file. We're going to name it our first name .text. And then we're going to type into that text file, hello, it is me, Sam, Josh. Yeah. So if you go, okay, you just don't have a home. It's fine.
Okay.
So get back out of the full screen view. Click on Finder. Preferences, sidebar, yeah.
Are you like open a project with that one, or just dragging it into?
You should open up, yeah, that's your cache,
That's
Okay.
that's outside of it. So if you go back up a level, you should be able to just drag that onto Atom. I think you might have tried that again.
I'm just dragging the whole folder into it.
Yeah, which is really just saying I want to open this with Atom. You could just as easily go File, Open, and go find it.
So you got learning-git2 folder, right?
Do File, yeah. I guess this is going to show up just a second. So is everybody able to get a file set up there? Okay. So now if we go back to our terminal, if you're in the code directory, which you probably are because we haven't done anything else, you want to cd into learning-git2. And if you do pwd, it should look like this. Okay, that's fine. Just close that. And then right click on learning-git, new file. Just your name.text. And then just type something like, hey, it's me. Okay.
I've got no such file or directory.
So if you type ls, oh, you're in there already. If you type pwd, yeah, so you're already there. Yeah, that's cool. Cool, that's great. Okay. So now we're inside of our Git repository. If you type ls-al, it's going to list a little bit more information about what's in your directory. And you're going to see there's actually a folder in there called .git. That .git folder is what actually houses all the information about Git. It's going to house all your differences, all kinds of stuff. So if you ever wanted to go look at the audit or understand a little bit more about how Git works, you can go inside of that directory and play around. In general, though, at this level, don't touch it. Just pretend like it doesn't exist at all. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to type get status, and you should see that you have an untracked file, which is say that it's never been committed to Git. So we have an untracked file, it's your name.txt, should be in red. Basically, it's saying, hey, you changed a thing, really, you created a thing that I didn't know about yet. You should probably let me know about it. Right there. So, you have to save your file. Okay, so now if you go back here. So you're still on code. So if you do cd space learning-git, press up because it's getting to, I think. Yeah. If you press tab, yeah, press enter. Okay, now on to get status. Space status. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so did everybody get to this spot?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're all going to add and commit and push this change. We do these 3 commands together almost every time. Essentially what we're saying is I've gotten to the point in my code where I'm ready to create a version. I want to keep track of where the code is right now. Right, so you've probably done this like when you're creating reports or writing Word documents or whatever. You'll like save a version. You'll say like this is the one from 2018-08-15. I want to keep track of where it was at that specific point in time. We're going to do the same thing with our code. It's just we're going to let Git handle that process. So the first thing we're going to do, there's 2 commands that go together that we're going to treat like one. We're always, every single time, going to do them together. Okay. So the first one is git add -a, which is I want to add all of my files that are currently in red to a version. So we're going to say git add -a, and then we're going to immediately do git commit -m. -m is the message. And then in quotes, we're going to say, this is my first commit. You have to do the -m. You have to actually write a message. This is a philosophical viewpoint that the creators of Git had. If you're putting code into a repository, you should be able to explain what that code is. And other people should be able to better understand what that code is and what its purpose is by the message. So they force it. Which actually leads to a lot of times where you're just writing stupid or not again or something like that because you have to write something, but you do always have to write a message. If you don't put the -m, it will open up an editor in your terminal. We looked at this a little bit on the first day. It'll open up Vim. It's going to feel like a confusing, crazy place that you won't necessarily know what to do. It's fine. Just close the terminal if that happens to you. Reopen it, get back, cd back into this directory, and do the commit again, but this time with the -m, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay. All right. So we're going to do git commit. So we're going to treat git add and git commit as the exact same thing. There's some slight differences, but for your purposes, you'll always do them together. All you're doing is creating a version of the code. So now if you type git status, it's going to say, okay, you're on branch master. Your branch is based on origin master. Oh, that's interesting. It says the upstream is gone, which is very strange. But it says there's nothing to commit. Working tree is clean because we've already committed all of our changes. Like it's created a version now. We're ready to go. Does everybody see something like this? If you don't see something like this, let me. You don't. Yeah. You got weird state. Control C is your friend, so now you should be able to do. You forgot the end quotes. So press up. Yeah, you can actually just put the end quotes where you are right now. Yeah, no, it doesn't matter. Just put it. Okay. Okay, there you go. And if you're going to do status again. It did? Okay. So, I would, even if you're not a note taker, this is a useful time to take notes because this is something you're going to do over and over again. and it's going to be something that you're going to forget. Like, what is that thing I need to do to actually get that to go? So again, we start with git clone. Oh, you know what? I have a better one. So we start with git clone and then the URL, and that brings the stuff down from GitLab. Then we cd to the directory, so it's going to be cd tilde, in our case, code / git-learning 2. And then we can run git status, which is going to tell us what the status of our commit tree looks like. And then we can run git add capital A, git commit -m, some message. Okay. And these two always go together, and really there's a third one that we should really always do with these two, which is git push. And in our case, we're going to be pushing the master for the moment. So the master branch on GitHub is really where your good code should be. That's where like your production level code should be. Master is sort of the shared, everybody agrees that this is the source of truth code. We'll talk about branches and what that means in just a second, but that's where we're going to push our code to. Okay, so everybody's going to put their stuff on master. So these three go together, and this is about pushing our code from our local computers up into the cloud, onto GitLab. So right now, if I go back to GitLab, or if any of you go back to GitLab, and you refresh the page, there's no code in here. Like, it's still an empty repository. But as soon as we do these three commands, we're going to see code starts to show up. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that first. I'm going to say git, well, so we did the add and commit. So I pushed, and now when I refresh the page on GitLab, I can see my text file showed up. So now if each of you does the same thing, we should start to see your files show up here as well.
Okay, so you hit enter after each one?
You press enter after each one. Yeah.
So GitLab said something interesting when we logged in. It says that we can't push or pull anything until we change, like try to change my password on my account.
Oh yeah, so go do that. Yeah, the orange thing. It's just trying to create a GitLab, a real GitLab username and password for you that it associates with the GitHub username that you use.
Should I have gotten my file, or because I'm seeing sam.txt on my computer?
For everybody, right? So we are all pushing to the same branch. So it's basically like I'm pushing my code, you're going to push your code. In the end, we should see all 10 or however many, 7 text files should show up there.
Okay.
Yep. So this is like a shared Dropbox folder, right? And basically what I've done is I've taken a file from my computer and I dropped it in, and now you're going to take a file from your computer and drop it in. That's what this is doing. This is basically like I want to copy a file from my computer to the shared Dropbox folder.
It's just like I've got a error GitLab did not push code to this project. It's fatal, could not read from my computer.
Let me see if somehow the permissions got messed up.
You're saying you're not allowed to push code to this project?
Yeah, let me see. The permissions are probably... It's public. Which is fine. Probably do need to add you guys. Can you put your usernames into Slack? And I will add you as members to the project. That is probably what the issue is. Yeah, so just as a heads up, the @ actually is, that's just reference for GitLab. You generally don't put that part in.
Gotcha.
But it doesn't really.
Username or user ID?
Username, probably. all you guys are maintainers. Project. Okay, so try again and should let it go.
This is my username, right? As for everyone else, it looks like a username. It's just like,
Yeah, it could be.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. That's pretty, yeah, well done. Okay.
We need to get pull before.
Yes, so now that I've pushed, you will need to get pull, which it should be telling you. If you do get pull origin master, what that's going to do is copy down everything that's on the GitLab folder down to your computer, which for the moment is just my sam.txt. The reason it does that is it's going to look to see if there are any conflicts with what you're trying to push and with what exists currently on GitLab. Still not.
No.
Yeah, when they push.
So here's. Cool.
Do git status.
Just do git. Let's show that show now.
If it would have worked.
Yes, it would.
If you didn't work, the histories are. Okay. I've never seen that. I wonder if it's just because. Try to do this. Try to do the pool, but add that flag. -- allow unrelated histories. Should just be able to copy that if you.
Enter commit message to explain what the version is necessary.
Yeah, that's okay. So this is that Vim thing. So what we're going to do is press escape and shift : X. Do git status. Hit ls. Do git push origin master.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. So this is the Vim thing. So this is a good exercise. So if you get into this Vim thing, you'll see all these like tildes along the left-hand side. That's indicative of being in Vim. If you press escape and then shift : X, enter, lowercase. Okay, so that's how you get out of it.
Okay.
So now you should be able to get push origin master, and it'll probably tell you you can't do that because Ken's already pushed stuff. Okay, so now you have to get pull again. Escape, shift : X. Here, get push origin master. So you got your stuff up, same thing, set all the tildes along the side, means you're in Vim. So if you type escape, Yep, and then shift colon. Yeah, press the shift colon. Yep, just one time. Shift, and then X, shift.
Exactly, we just did right now.
Yeah, I'll go through it again. Okay. So what's happening is you do the git pull. What that's doing is copying everything that's on GitLab down to your computer. What happened was it said, well, what's on your computer and what's on GitLab is different, and I need to resolve that somehow. I want you to tell me why you're merging these two things, because they're kind of a weird state. So I want you to type a message, because again, it goes around, they have this philosophy of you can tell everybody about why you're doing everything. So it opens up Vim for you, because that's a text editor, you can type the message in.
What is Vim?
Vim is a text editor. It's exactly the same as Atom. The only difference is it's actually in your console. It's in the terminal. It actually exists there. And so that's all it's really doing. It's opening up a page on Atom and letting you type, and then it's taking that message and it's putting it on. So, and then we said, okay, now that everything's up to date with what's on master, let me copy everything that's here and put it on to GitLab. That's the
Got it. Okay.
So
We have to pull every time before we push.
You have to pull every time that somebody else has made a change on a branch that you're trying to work on and push it together.
So we just start typing escape right here.
Yeah, so you can type escape and then shift colon and then X. Enter. So then do git push origin master, and I'll probably tell you can't. That's okay. Yeah, and it says it's telling you here actually that some other people have pushed some stuff to master. You need to pull that down first. So if you do git pull origin master. So I did it again. So shift colon X.
No escape.
Yeah, sorry, escape. Yeah. Enter, and then git push origin master. Somebody else beat you. Do git pull origin master.
Oh, it's because people are doing it.
It's because other people are doing it at the same time. Escape shift colon X. Git push origin master. It was Josh. I can tell. Sorry.
Just thinking that.
No, that's
I
fine.
didn't think it was going to work. So
Yeah, that's fine.
Times.
This is what's great about Git and versioning. It's like we can all be doing this, and it's a little annoying that we have to pull and push, but we're not messing up each other's stuff.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to work this way. So.
So it's fine now.
So yeah, so you're all up to date. So now if we go to GitLab, we should see everybody's text files are there. And in fact they are, and because you've all pulled, well, so some of you haven't pulled the latest.
Yeah.
So some of you, when you ls in your directory, will only see a few of the files. Like I still only see mine because I haven't done a pull. But as soon as I do git pull origin master, I've now copied everything from GitLab and it now exists on my computer. Right? And I can see that actually even in Sublime, I can see all of your text files here.
Okay, so typically, if you were at work doing this, people probably you wouldn't get that error message because you probably wouldn't be doing it at the same time as a bunch of people.
So the reason why you don't usually get that error like on an hour by hour basis is because when you work on things, you work on branches. So when you're working on a particular feature, you work on what's called a branch. But we're going to leave it right there. We're going to take a 10-minute break. We're going to let you guys process that a little bit, and then we'll talk about branches when we come back.
So I wrote down the steps, but let's say I was going to get a new computer.
Mm-hmm.
Is there somewhere I can find the steps for when we were installing Git with the
Yeah. Well, yes. So let me see. Yeah, this is pretty good. There's a lot of extra stuff in here. You're gonna have to actually like read and pay close attention to what it's actually going to do, but this does technically have all of it. If you get a new computer while you're in this class, just come in a little early and I'll walk through it with you. So, but I can put this in. So. Okay.
I think I did it right.
Yeah, let's see.
So I installed it.
Yep.
And then I think it's configured.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. So you're using your emails there. Okay. So if you do, okay, in your so
This is looking like my configured.
okay.
That's what I got here from here, like I was saying, big configured or something. Yeah, it's like good.
Okay. So just go back to just type git. Yep. Cool. Okay, so you have git. That's awesome. So if you do you know how to create a directory by any chance? Mkdir. Try mkdir. dir space. Okay. Type dir. Cool, that worked. So do cd space code. Okay. So now we're going to do git space clone, and then go space, and then go to GitLab. Oh, sorry. Like open up GitLab.
President.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, so click on that copy button. It's right here. Yep. You do need to do that, so you won't be able to push your project. If you scroll over somewhere like password, I think. Yeah. Just create a password. Okay, so that should all be good. So now if you go back to your terminal. Paste. Yes. This is very much like a Mac. Do you install like some special
All I did was install Git.
type LS?
LS.
Sorry. Nah, you got something else going on there. That's really cool. Like now you have all these commands with you. I have no idea how to do that. It's on, whatever, it's
Okay.
awesome. CD space learning tab. Tab. Yeah, hit tab. Enter. Okay. Get status. Okay, cool. You're all caught. If you check all that, you should see all our text files.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, see all that. That's everybody's text files. So now if you want to open this project, so open up Atom and then do file open. I think you actually canceled. Do file open folder. Find it. It should be whatever everyone user is. Yeah. There's electron.
code.
Right.
Yep. Just click on that. Just one second. Close that. Cool. So I'll close that Git folder that it has on. Oh no, it is closed. You're on.
Okay. Go ahead, Joe.
You can close these other things. You can close that and close this and close that. If you just click on it, it just saves just not Git. Don't touch that.
Okay.
Yeah. But there you go.
Yep. Should I add something?
If you want to, yeah, you can go through that process. But you're in a good enough spot to keep following. You finish installing all your stuff.
Yeah, so I'm there. I just know I'm trying to find the directories I can drag it into that.
Okay, so take OS.
What did you
Okay,
want
so,
to transfer the
so I'm
HMU?
gonna go ahead and get inside of it. So just CD burn tab.
It was just your name.
Press the tab.
.txt.
Okay. So if you go back to your Finder, the reason is you just don't have your home directory on the sidebar. So if you go to Finder Preferences, and then sidebar, so this thing. Click on. You got them all of them. Okay. So then if you exit out of this,
Just saying. Hey, look.
yeah, so now,
That I need.
yeah. So then you go inside the code.
I can just drag that, right?
Well, you don't, I mean, you could, but you probably want to go inside there and just drag that.
Up. To the.
So,
There we go.
yeah, you might have to open it first. That you get your
And I can close this git config when I'm else on the other project. Like this shouldn't have anything to do with it. Just keep
yeah, it doesn't have it. Yeah, you don't need that. Yeah.
You said we can use GitLab to deploy into production, like whatever our server is we're working on, like at work.
Yep.
Is there security issues with that?
No, there shouldn't. So it gets real complicated real fast, but no, there shouldn't be. So you have to understand. So what GitLab does is it allows you to be able to use its infrastructure to be able to set up code on your own servers that is a list of instructions on how to deploy to production. So essentially what you'll do, like in our case, we have GitLab set up and we create these things called GitLab CI YAMLs. I'll show you an example. This one's pretty simple. So basically what it says is, okay, I want to go through all these stages. I want to do a build, I want to have an after build, I want to have a test, I want to have a push, I want to have a deploy. And we use those stages down here to define a set of bash commands that we're going to run. And so we're going to run, okay, we're going to do an npm install of Bower, we're going to install gulp, we're going to do a Bower install, we're going to do yarn install, and we're going to then compile our assets. Then we're going to take, eventually we get to the deploy stage, so there's all kinds of stuff happening here, but eventually we get to the deploy stage, and what we really do there is we just sync our stuff with AWS. Basically we just push it onto an AWS server. That's all we're really doing. But all this stuff are things like you could take the same exact code and run it in your Mac, and assuming that you have the right packages installed, it'll do exactly the same thing as what's happening here. You're just listing the commands to get to production deployment. The benefit of doing this way, though, is a couple of things. One, it uses what's called Docker, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. It's a container. Basically, it says, I want to have a specific installation of Linux with certain packages, and I want it to be the same every single time. Basically, I want to set up a computer that is exactly the same every single time that I start it, and I only want it for this one purpose.
Right.
So it goes and it starts one of those up, and we can actually watch. So in all this, you can set it up so that it runs on your server. So all this stuff is actually running on our servers. It just is looking at GitLab to see if it needs to do anything. So if I go look at these pipelines, then you can actually watch as we're doing deployments. A cooler one to look at is ICE, which is so here, whenever you push something to master, it builds it, it creates a Docker image of our ICE, it updates any gems that we have, which are packages in Ruby, and then it deploys it to all of our environments. And then after that, it cleans some things up with Honey Badger. But you can go look at this and actually see the commands being run inside of a terminal and watch it actually happen, and it does the deployment. Now, in terms of security, the only additional security is that you're looking at GitLab. GitLab then is exposing potentially to anybody who can get access to it what those commands are. But you can actually run GitLab on your own computers too. So you can put it on your own servers if you want. Yeah. Yeah. And that's free to do, I believe. Like, it doesn't actually cost anything to run GitLab on your own servers. You just have to have somebody who can set it up for you.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, David. For the last exercise, did we have to push what we did to?
Yeah. So you would want to do that git add a, git commit m. Git push order master. Which, by the way, last class I put into Slack. It's gone already. Oh, but I pinned it. So if you go to Slack and you click on the little pin icon over here, it'll show these things over here. If you click on this Roger Doodler github.io git guide, it does explain a lot of this. So this is actually where you would probably want to start. So download Git for OSX, and then create a new repository, check out a repository. So this is where we started. And then your workflow, adding and committing things. So these are the things that go together, pushing things. Yeah. So these commands do exist, and they're all over the internet. This seemed like a pretty good resource for helping to explain it in a nice, visual, simple way.
And this is for lab, not for desktop.
What's that?
And this is for Git lab, not for like Git desktop.
This is for Git desktop. Yeah. So Git. So this GIT command is a protocol essentially that's been created that's used all over the place. GitLab, GitHub, Bitbucket, all those really are cloud hosting solutions. But all this stuff is exactly the same on your computer. So generally you're doing all this stuff on your computer.
Autocomplete makes that look so much better.
Yeah, autocomplete. Yeah. It's nice.
The way that you can download Git desktop,
Yeah.
can you download GitLab that way? Or it's like
Yeah,
a website?
It's a website. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. You can kind of, like I was saying, you could host GitLab. Like you could start a Linux server and run GitLab on your own computer, but you wouldn't like download it onto your desktop.
Okay.
Yep. All right. So to review before we go into what branches are, let's talk a little bit about. So what did Git clone do?
Clone the repository.
It cloned the repository from where?
From, I guess, from GitHub to your local drive?
Yeah, so GitLab in our case, but GitHub or GitLab to our local drive. Okay, and then then we changed some things and we ran Git status, and what happened when we did that?
It'll pretty much tell us if we have like files that need to be committed, I guess.
Yeah, basically it tells you if there's files that need to be committed. And then we did git add-a and git commit-m and put a message in, and what did that do?
Put it in the queue ready to be pushed into the cloud.
Put it in the queue ready to be pushed to the cloud, but it also set it as a version. We created a version, we locked a version. We can always look at that particular version of the code as it existed at that point in time. Like you can go back and look at each one of your commits and see what that looked like. So if you go back, if we go back to our repo, so you see here there's this commits link. If I look at that, I can see each one of your commits, what the messages were, everything, and I can look at both what that commit was, which here it's green because it was added, right? So you're adding hello, this is Chen, but I can also browse all the files at that point in time. So in your case, the only thing that existed was chen.txt at that point in time. Yeah, so you have all the versions as they existed when that commit was made for each and every person. Does that make sense? So tons of history and auditing is what's happening.
Add and commit.
So that's what git add and git commit do, is they create another one of these messages essentially. Also, when you guys were doing the git pull and it was opening up Vim, that's also essentially creating another commit. So you can see those are actually happening here too. You can see the merge commits. All right. So then we did git push origin master, and what did that do?
Push any changes you made to the GitLab.
It pushes any changes we made locally up to GitLab, and a lot of the times we were told, what did we see at first?
In there,
In there.
we didn't have permission.
It's not that you didn't have permission. What was it?
I guess you had to pull first.
You had to pull first, so you had to get any changes that had already been pushed up to GitLab so that you were consistent with what was there before you pushed.
Yeah.
Okay, so you then git pull copies everything down from GitLab onto our local computer, and sometimes when things have changed, we'll end up in Vim, the VI, the editor, the text editor. And what did we need to do to get out of that? Escape.
Shift colon X.
Escape shift colon X, which is just exit while saving. Okay. That then creates a new message for us. It already has a message set up inside of it. It's automated. That's where this merge branch master of GitLab Flatiron, like you never wrote that, but it put it as a commit message for you because it was inside of that editor when you closed it. Okay. Once that happens, then we can git push again, and assuming nobody's changed anything, it goes up. Okay. Now this is kind of a frustrating flow, and this is where subversioning failed incredibly is that this is how it worked all the time. You were constantly like having to pull the stuff down, fix it, push it back up, and it's annoying. So people said, well, I don't want to do that. I want a better way of versioning where I can work for a long period of time without having to worry about what other people have done, which is really just like a day or two, but you know, you want to be able to work for a while. So the way that we do that is with branches. And the way I want to try to explain branches is everything's a branch in Git. Master is the default shared area by convention. So whenever you create a new Git project, it will create a master branch for you. It's always there. It's just a convention. You don't actually even need the master branch. You can totally delete the master branch and everything will work fine. You can do stuff in a completely different flow. But by convention, there's always a master branch, and that generally is the shared branch. That's generally where your good code is. That's where you're like finalized, ready for production. Everybody agrees on this, the code base goes. Now, when you go to do your own work, if you're working on a particular feature, or you're going to work by yourself for a little while, or maybe even two people are going to go off, but you're going to go work on a feature on your own, you probably want to start creating branches. So you're going to start with master, and then we're going to check out a branch of our own, and we're going to work from there. And then only when we're ready, we'll merge the branch back into master. What we do when we create a branch is essentially we create a copy of master as it was at that time into our own branch, and we start working from there. And then eventually, when we're ready, we merge these back together, which Git takes care of looking for where there's differences, helping us to identify where there's problems, where there's conflicts, and then we resolve those conflicts and then merge them back together. Okay, does that make sense? Questions about that? These are hard concepts, so I don't want to gloss over them.
No questions. Well, yeah, kind of. So my thing is not populating in the on the.
It's not getting pushed up yet?
Yeah.
So, let's see. So you're probably in the same state that they all go with the Git pull scenario.
I'll pull it again, and then I'll try to push it again.
Do Git status. Okay. Okay. So do Git add -a. Capital A. That's I think 3 problems. So over there, and then Git commit -a. Yeah, lowercase.
So how did you get
Space.
have an issue with design? You might have I wrote hello, right?
No, so space and then double quotes,
Right.
and then just some message.
Here, so
It doesn't right. And then Git push words. So now you should.
Thank you.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're each going to create our own branch, and we're going to make a change to our files, and then we're going to push those branches. Before we do that, because Charles just pushed up a change, let's go ahead and everybody pull again to make sure that everybody's back up to date.
Sorry, do you need origin master on the Git pull command?
You technically don't, but it is a good practice to do it, because if you try to do git pull origin master when you're not on master, it'll give you an error and it'll help you to stay like in the right place. But it is not necessary. If you do git pull, it'll pull everything for you. Yeah.
Sam, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm trying to post something and it's not showing up. So in my pattern file, I wrote hello, right?
Yep.
So I'm going to save that.
Looks like Git.
Which one?
If you go back to Adam.
Alright, so now I'm back here. I'm going to get full storage. Push it out.
I know I'm doing these stats. A lot of times doing these stats, but I don't understand this.
Like,
So you still have to follow it.
So, I forget.
Yeah. And they have some busy good like that they call fish and sell like that capital.
From what I can get.
It's not just, is it that him?
Space quotes. So cool.
You find anything? Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so everybody do get pull again, and then let's stop committing and adding things for the moment so we can get on our own branches and then.
Do it again after 12?
Yeah, because we just had another commit. So if you just get pull origin master again, then we should be good. And then everyone should be able to run get status, and you should see on branch master, your branch is up to date with origin master, nothing to commit, working tree clean. Cool, everybody? Okay.
Yeah. Question.
Yep.
In Adam,
Yep.
when we click everyone's text file, should we be able to read it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, is it my computer slow?
Double click on it maybe? We have to double. It's, just close Adam and read. Yes, I think it is. Okay, just so we get everybody onto a branch. So when you want to change branches, you use what's called checkout. You're going to check out a branch, okay? You can check out a branch that already exists by doing get checkout and then the name of the branch. We only have one branch right now, so that doesn't make much sense. You can also check out a branch and create it at the same time by doing get checkout -b and then the name of the branch. So let's do get checkout -b, and then in my case I'm going to put Sam and just put your name. If you then run get status, it should say on branch Sam, nothing to commit, working tree clean. Or if you type get branch, it'll show you the branches with your name highlighted.
Okay.
So now you can see it.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's just here. So if you want to do that get checkout -b, let's make sure everybody gets to here.
And the dash B just means branch or?
The -b means I want to check it out and create a branch at the same time. And create a branch, yeah. So now, like if we want to check out master now, if we want to switch back and forth, you can do get checkout master, and then if I do get branch, I'm on master, but I don't do the -b because I'm not trying to create master because master already exists. Okay. And then I can check out Sam again. Oh. And now I'm back on Sam. So everybody get that? So get checkout B says I want to create a branch and check it out, named whatever you name it. Get checkout and the name of the branch just checks out that branch. Basically, it's like moving between two folders, right? So I created a copy of master where it was at that point of time into my SAM folder, and now the get checkout is just moving me back and forth between the folders. Does that make sense? Okay. Now the thing that's weird about that though, and that's different than how you typically interact with folders, is there's not actually a new folder on your computer. The same folder changes its contents depending on what branch you have checked out. We're going to prove that now. Okay. So let's go ahead and go into Atom and open up your file, or anybody else's file. It doesn't actually matter, but just open up a file, And we're going to change it to say, I am making changes, and save it. And then if you go back to the terminal and type get status, it's going to say, okay, you're on branch Sam, you modified sam.txt or whatever file you modified. You should probably add and commit that.
Status.
Get status, yeah. Okay, everybody here? Okay, so then we're going to add and commit this. Don't push it yet because I want to show some things, but get add -a, get commit -m, my first changes, get status, and I'll say you're on branch Sam, there's nothing to commit, working tree is clean. If I go back, it still says I am making changes. If I go to get lab, nothing's happened. Why has nothing happened yet on get lab? I haven't pushed it, right? So we still only have one branch, it's master. If I look at sam.txt, it's still exactly the same as it was before, it doesn't have my changes. Okay. All right. Now the first thing we're going to do is look at what checkout does on our local computers. So let's now go ahead and get checkout master. And it should say you switch to branch master, your branch is up to date with origin master, and when you go look at that file, switch back. Because master, even on your local computer, doesn't have the changes that you just made on the SAM branch. Does that make sense to everyone? I really don't know. I remember this being incredibly confusing to me, and so like I'm actually trying to gauge like, is this totally cool as everybody? If it's not, let me know.
So it shouldn't still say I'm making changes?
It doesn't still say I'm making changes because I switched from my branch to master. So even though it's the exact same file on my computer, right? I mean, literally it was open in here and I just did the checkout and it changed the content. The point is that when you change branches, it changes the contents of your entire Git folder to be whatever it was on that branch at the last point that you made a change.
So when you create a new branch,
yep,
it clones the local directory.
Yep. At that point in time.
Switches in a split second, even
Yep.
when it talks to you Adam that
Yep.
fast,
Yep.
and throws you into the.
That's right. Yes, absolutely.
But mine still says I'm
Okay. Okay. So let's go back into your terminal. Type git status. Okay. So you didn't add and commit on your branch. So I'll go over that in a second, but let's finish here. So go git checkout the name of your branch. Yep. Okay, and then do git add -a capital A. Capital A is very important, everyone. Okay, so git add capital A, not git add lowercase a. The capital A means it's all, and it's trying to emphasize all. So you can do -- lowercase the word all, or you can do capital A, but it's important. And then git commit -m, which is lowercase, and space quotes some message. It's everybody. Yep. And then close quotes. And okay. Now if you check out master, that'll work. So git checkout master. There you go.
Okay.
Yep. So is everybody able to reproduce this? If you weren't, I want to walk through with you. So.
Did you pull up your journal?
Yep.
Okay, so after we check out a branch, we have to commit it.
Yes. So I'll go over that in just a second. If I had not, so if on my branch I had not committed the changes, if I just made the changes and then checked out master, those changes go with me when I switch branches. Okay. So it's only when you commit that they stay on their branch. So we'll do an example of that in just a second. Okay. Any questions though about what we've done so far?
I just want to make sure that I'm.
Yep.
Just like. Did everything here.
So do get status. Okay, yep, so you're on master, new master. There are changes.
So I had changed that to.
Yes, so if you do get checkout your branch name, it should go back. We just want the losses so we show us the see. Okay, so that's the whole point, though, actually. So when you're on your branch, because you committed you only committed this version to your branch, right? It didn't commit it to master. So when you switch to master, they go away because it goes back to what master was.
Since I haven't pushed that.
It's actually not about pushing.
Okay.
It's all local. So you have two branches which are essentially copies of each other. They're two folders. You made a change to the copy, but not to the original. And so when you switch from the copy branch to the original, it goes back to the original. And then when you switch back to your copy, it goes back to the copy of your changes.
Got it.
So it's like having two folders, but there's really only one folder.
It's like editing Word document, exiting without saving.
It is like that.
So then if I go back to get checkout master, it should
It'll
go
go
back to.
That's right. Yeah. Get it? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this is this is not a common thing. We don't even have very good analogies for what's happening right now. It's incredibly powerful, which is, probably why it took so long for somebody to come up with it, is just the mind-blowingness of this idea of I have the same folder, and when I just make this command in my terminal, it completely changes what the content of that folder is craziness. But it's incredibly powerful because it keeps them exactly the same except for those exact differences, which makes it very fast at being able to identify where you need to fix up your conflicts, which is what makes all this so powerful.
And so always to change a branch, you do get checkout -b in the name of the branch.
To create a new branch,
Okay.
that's how you create a new branch. After that, to change the branch, it's just get checkout in the branch name, so no -b.
Okay.
So the -b is saying I also want to create a branch.
Okay.
So now let's sync them together.
So now to sync them together, we do a merge, but we're going to get to that in a little bit. I want to do a couple things before we get there. Okay, so let's start with, I want to show you what it looks like if you make changes and you don't commit them. So I'm going to get checkout Sam again, and you can follow along. I'm back to having sam.text say I am making changes. I'm going to open up somebody else's file, so open up Charles' file. And I'm going to change this to for those of you from the 90s. Okay. So, all right, now I'm going to save that. And if I go back, I can get status, and I can see the changes there, right? But I'm not going to add and commit it. So I am on my branch, right? It says right here on branch Sam. But I'm going to get checkout master without committing things. What do you think is going to happen? Is the file going to change?
No.
No, it's not, because I haven't committed them. So it still says what's up, and if I get status, it still says that I've modified it and I haven't committed it. Okay, so I can move it around. Now, if I had made changes to this file on master and on my branch at the same time somehow, it would complain and say you can't check that out because there's conflicts and you can't do this thing. But because I haven't, it lets me move those changes from branch to branch. You generally don't want to do this. This is a bad practice. You shouldn't be making changes on one branch and then checking out another branch until you've added and committed your changes. Okay, so we're going to go back to my branch. I actually don't want to make this change. So if I want to get rid of the changes that I've made, you can do get checkout dot. And that just makes the changes go away. What that's doing is saying get checkout the branch as it was before any of the things that you're showing me in get status. So it's a nice little reversion technique.
What was that command again?
Get checkout dot. Okay.
And if you added you can't do that. So
Yeah, once you've added, you can't do that. You have to do a. There are commands that are a little more complicated where you can unstage and then you can do that. So you can always kind of, and that's the beautiful thing about Git. There is always a way to get back. There's always a way to unstage. There's always a way to uncommit. There's always a way to get back to a certain state. They're just sometimes complicated. We won't cover many of those in here, but it does exist. It's one of the benefits of versions. It's like you can always go back to a version and make that your current version. Okay. So we're on our branch. We've made our small change. Let's go ahead and push that up to see what that looks like on GitLab. So git push origin, and now you're going to put your branch name instead of master.
isn't there nothing to push?
Say that again? There is from before, right? Before, remember, because I made the change to my file that was, I am making changes.
Gotcha, and Sam rather than Charles.
That's right, that's right. Yep. Yes, there's nothing to push from the Charles change, but it will push the Sam change that I made.
Yeah.
So if we come back here now, we'll see that there's a few branches. So we'll sit here and make sure that everybody gets up. But, so here's my branch. I can do a comparison or create a merge request. We'll talk about merge requests in just a second. I can make the comparison though, and it shows the changes. Right? I deleted this, I added this. So let's everybody check out your branch and then git push origin your branch name. I should see it show up here. So yeah, so git check out your branch and then just do git push origin your branch name, and it should show up here. Yeah, so there's Jen. And I can help walk you through. I want to make sure everybody
I'm
gets.
saying the remote had hung up unexpectedly.
So could be an issue. Control C. Sorry.
Git push origin, your branch name.
Control C. It's next.
It's back here. Right, git push.
Yeah, origin. Origin. Yeah, but you were right on the so that's not an issue. It could just be GitLab network issues. Okay. So you're on a different state. So if you're in branch, okay, so do git add dash a. And git commit dash m. So space friends or quotes and some message. And then quotes. Git push or commit. We get original.
You said git push.
Origin with your branch name.
Oh, well, control C first. It's control C. Just open up a new terminal. And cd code slash tab. Okay, so L and tab. It says git push origin. Just because do control C and then you git origin. Well, that won't work. Do git checkout master.
Did y'all make any changes in your branch before you did
Yep. To the file.
this?
Yep.
No, sir. I changed some of your files.
Oh,
Yeah, and then try to push it.
I just did the same one.
Oh. Try to go back to when you get and make a change.
Okay.
So if you go get checkout and in that branch,
Okay.
and then find whatever file you want.
Okay, I think it's just like. Try this, Control C. Do get checkout dash B. And then just choose a different direction. Oops. D, and then just hit the space and then press up. Space, and then just choose a different direction. Yeah. Okay, and get push order. Okay, no idea. There's something weird with the branch. It's probably GitLab's fault. I don't know. I'm not sure. Okay.
Cool. So look at all those branches. So now everybody has a branch. You guys are real developers. Figured it out. I don't know why I'm here anymore. Yeah, but this is it, and like this is how people actually really work. So what would happen at this point is you would submit a merge request. So let's say that you'd been working on some feature set, and you were ready for somebody else to look at your code. You create a merge request. So I'll do that. And you can put in some additional information here, and you can actually assign it to somebody. So like I can assign it to anybody who's on the team, or I can leave it open. I can add labels. I can ask for specific people to approve it. I can say that it requires so many approvals. We'll ignore these two things for a moment. But now that merge request is open, and you should all see in your GitLab that there's a merge request open on the left-hand side. And if you click into that, you should be able to, if you click on changes, you should be able to see the changes that I made.
So click on merge requests in our own.
Yep, click on merge requests in your own GitLab, and you'll see my merge request is there, my first changes. If you click on that, it'll bring you to a page like this. And then if you click on changes, you can see the changes that I made. Does everybody see that?
And then so if someone does something that you didn't like, you can go back to the original.
So you could. This part is called code review. So what happens here, generally there's more than one change that's happened, but people will read through the code and make sure that it makes sense both logically and like its readability. Like, can I actually read what you were trying to do and understand what's going on? If you don't like something that's in the code, you can create a comment. So you can all actually do this right now if you want to. Just click on the little comment box and write a comment. Yeah, nah, this is horrible. You have no idea what you're doing. You've wasted the last 10 years of your life, Sam. It's probably true. But yeah, go ahead and actually create, yep, so there you go. So, and they show up for me to then respond to, you have no idea what you're talking about. What's up? And then I can comment and resolve.
Okay. Here, I would say, okay, back here,
Yep.
get,
So start with get status. It's always good to know where. Yeah, so then you still haven't actually added and committed this because it's running.
okay, so commit dash A,
So get add dash A.
get add dash A.
Capital, yep. And then get commit dash A. Space. Quotes.
Are you able to
Alright, and then get push origin.
Can you go to the CSS fundamentals?
Okay, cool. So that's it.
Forks, can you go to the CSS?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you need
I don't know if it actually requires one.
So yeah, you can set up all kinds of rules around how you want the approval process to work as a team. And so as an administrator, you can actually say it's impossible to get on the master unless 2, 3, 5, 1 person, however many people have approved this merge request. And what happens in that case, we don't have it set up, but this merge won't be here like this. It'll be a disabled button, and it'll say still pending however many approvals.
Where are you guys?
So on GitLab, if you go, now there's a merge request, which is my merge request on the left-hand side. It says merge requests, and there's a, so down, yeah, right there. So then if you click on that, and then click on changes, so you see there's a merge button. If you click on changes, scroll down a little bit. So you can see my changes and some comments.
Okay.
Sam?
Yep.
So I'm still having a hard time conceptualizing what this is exactly used for. Can you give me like a real instance of when this would be?
Yeah, so imagine you have a team of 6 developers, which I do, and you are trying to build a communication tool, which we are. So we're trying to build messaging. And we need one person to go, we're going to send one person off to do the authentication. They're going to go create the login screen. Another person is going to go off and build threads. And another person is going to go develop a search tool so that they can find an individual. Well, you don't want to have that issue that we had at the beginning of the class where you're constantly like running over each other. So what you do is you each go off on your own and you check out a branch. So one person checks out the search branch, one person checks out the thread branch, one person checks out the authentication branch. And they start working from there. They take where master was at the beginning of the week and you all start from there and move over, and then you start working on your code. And then it does, in a sense, become a game of first man wins. So the first man to get, or woman, to get the code done, right? They put in a merge request, other people look at it, they make comments, you fix the comments, you push that back up. So that's the first nice thing about this, right, is the code review. You clean your code before it gets on the master, not after it's on master.
Right.
And then once the merge request gets approved, then you click the merge button and it merges it on the master. Now everybody else can merge that into their own branch and keep moving forward. When they merge it into their own branch, there's probably going to be some conflicts. Like I probably touched some of the same files while I was creating my threads as the person who was creating authentication at some point. And so when they merge it, they'll see what those conflicts are. They'll choose which pieces they want to keep that were mine and which pieces they want to keep that were theirs, and maybe both in some cases.
How do those conflicts show up?
Well, we're going to do that in just a second.
Okay.
Yep. And then once you resolve those conflicts, then you can put in your merge request. Somebody can look at it. You can merge it into master.
And then who can actually merge it into master? Is there someone that's like the domain?
It's all about the rules you have as a team.
Okay.
So you can set up, and there are like real things that you can do to make it so that you cannot, like you can make it so that you can't put anything on the master unless there's been 2 approvals, 3 approvals, 4 approvals, whatever, and that maybe it even has to be by a certain group of people. Like only these people are allowed to be approvers, right? We tend to operate much more openly, and it's basically you technically can merge, but don't do it until you get at least 1 approval. And at which point you can merge, and if it's something that you know somebody has a particular domain knowledge in, make sure that they look at it before you merge it.
And if it's been merged, can you unmerge it?
Yeah, so you can revert. It's called reverting. So you can, and that's the other thing about doing a merge request. A merge request might have like 15 commits in it. What you'll do typically, and that was one of the buttons that I clicked, is squash it when you go to merge it in, so it becomes 1 commit. You can then revert that single commit back to what it was. You lose some history in terms of like all of those versions of the commits go away and it becomes 1, but generally speaking, you're really only trying to create 1 thing anyway. And it makes it really easy to revert it back, to take it back out of the branch. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Cool.
Okay, so we all pushed our branches to Git, but you're the only one who made a merge request?
I'm the only one who made a merge request.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is just as easy as if you go to the branches and you click on your branch. Well, you don't even have to click on it. There's a button over here on the right that says merge request. You just click on it. And then there's some things you can fill out. You don't actually have to fill out any of them. You can just click submit merge request, which is a button further down the page. And then So like Nate has a merge request now. Okay. So now we are going to create some conflicts. Let's see. The easiest way to do that all right, so everybody open up the sam.txt file and make it say, this file is mine now.
We have a master or a branch?
On your branch. On your branch, so make sure you have your branch checked out and change sam.txt to be, this file is mine now. And then when you get there, save it. And then we're going to go back to our terminal, get status, make sure that it says that you're on your branch. And then we're going to add hey, get commit add some message, changing Sam's file to be mine. Changing file to be mine. Git push origin your branch.
Are we pushing our origin?
Push to your branch. Yep. Yep. Change it on your branch and then push it to your branch. Yep. So we're just doing that same, we'll do this over and over again. Git add-a, git commit-m, git push origin same. And then if you do get status, you should see on branch with nothing to commit working true clean.
Yep.
Okay, so you've all done that now. So what I'm going to do is actually, so don't follow along at this point because I'm going to try and create a conflict. This is mine, son. All right, so we're going to push that. Don't follow along with this. Git a All right, so now if I go look at my merge request, which already exists, you see, because they were commenting on it at various times as it was coming through, it shows what it was at that time, but now it's going to be, this is mine. So. Okay, so if I now click merge, that is going to merge it into master, but only in GitLab. Right? So it's not on master for any of you, it's not on master for me, it doesn't exist on any of our local computers on any branch anywhere. We're just doing the merge on GitLab. Okay. But what that means is, so there's that revert button, by the way.
Just to make sure we get it. So if we get pulled now, it would show up on the
if you check on master and git pull master, it will show up on your local computer. So, which is nice. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So make sure when you run git status that you're on your branch and it says nothing to commit working tree clean. And if that's not the case, let me know because we need to get you out of that state before we keep going. Cool? Okay. So then we're going to check out master and we're going to get pull origin master. And we should see fast forward sam.txt. There's been 2 changes. One was an addition, one was a deletion. That's what that plus and minus means. It also says 1 insertions, 1 deletion. Okay, so you pulled it onto your bridge, which is okay. So do you get status? Yes. So that's fine. You just kind of got ahead of us. That's all right. So does anybody else see does anybody else see something that says conflict? You shouldn't, but I just want to. Okay. All right. So now we have our changes locally. So if you go back into Atom, you should see my changes are there. Right? So now we pulled it down from master. But yeah, I know. That's where we're going though. It's okay. We're going to get to you in just a second. Okay. So now we're going to check out our branch. And then we're going to merge those changes from master into our branch locally. Okay? So we're going to do get merge master. So this is exactly the same as clicking the button on get lab, but we're going to do it locally. Okay. So we say get merge master. We get this crazy Vim thing again. How do we get out of this?
Escape.
Yep.
Hit check out.
Escape ship colon X. Escape ship colon X. And that gets us out of there. So now if you do get status, in my case I actually don't have any problems, but you should have conflicts.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't have problems because my branch was the same. And so, okay. If you open up, actually can somebody, because I don't have a very good way of showing this. Can somebody connect to the solstice up here and show that?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, you're the most familiar with the technology, so. What's that?
The thing that makes me giggle. There's a 15-year-old boy that says,
We're getting emails about the Git changes we're making.
Oh yeah, status updates, push notifications. That very quickly goes to your spam box, I'll tell you, but.
I did escape ship colon X. It's asking me if I want to display all 4,780 possibilities. I don't know if that's the right thing.
I want you to just say no. You can take get status. Okay.
Have you worked in terminal a lot before?
Okay, yeah, that was it. So if you open up Atom, so Atom has this really nice interface. Actually, GitLab does too. It's pretty similar. GitLab's is a little nicer because it says use theirs or use mine. But basically, this is saying which set of code do you want? Do you want the code that's between the equals and this thing, which is this is mine son, or do you want the things that are between the head and the equals, which is file is mine JD forever? And it's up to you. But I would suggest, just to make everyone's lives easier here in a minute, just click on mine. So just click on the use me button.
I don't have to use me.
no. Oh, okay. No, I'm saying it was
Are you using one?
well, so that's something.
I don't do this by default. So you're just looking at it in the less friendly way.
Okay.
I'm not sure why you don't, but you can just delete this. So you can just delete the master. Basically delete everything from there up. You want to keep this as mine son, but delete everything else. So delete that one.
All that?
You have to delete all that. And then delete your extra lines.
I didn't realize it was that high. I was so much.
How do I make it more friendly?
They should.
I don't know, because I thought that was just a default thing that happened with.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it's not just doing that by default. That's a Google search, like why am I not getting it?
Okay, so we just pulled down the master that had been changed. Is
Yep.
that-
Correct. Yeah? Okay. Yeah, so you pulled down the master that had been changed and then you merged it into your branch. You just did it all in one step. You pulled master into your branch, which created the conflicts. We pulled it onto master and then merged master.
Okay.
That's all. You like skipped a step essentially. What you can do is just generally not recommended because then your master locally is still out of date. You've just merged it into yours. So, but it's fine. Okay. I'm going to take over if that's cool.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay, so we can do a similar thing in GitLab. So if we go look now, so nobody push anything for just a second because I want to go look at one of these other merge requests which should have issues. So here it's saying, hey, I can't merge this merge request because there's some unresolved issues. So instead of doing that locally like we did when you create your merge request, you can click on this resolve conflicts, which does essentially the same thing as what we saw in Atom. So you can choose use ours or use theirs and then commit that through GitLab. It's the same thing as what you're doing locally, but these changes are only happening on GitLab again, so you have to pull it down to your local branch.
So when you say use theirs, does that mean that, I mean, you say use ours, does that mean that theirs is denied?
Does that mean what?
If you say use theirs, does that mean that the other merge request is denied?
It's not denied. It's just this, but basically all you're really doing is saying, they're saying, hey, there's a conflict, which is to say, somebody said it should be this, somebody else said it should be this. What should it be in the end? And you can actually choose not to make it any of these. Mm-hmm. You can make it something completely different if you wanted to. I can make it, and it's not that their entire merge request was denied. It's usually something like, hey, they were trying to add a new parameter called institution ID, and I, in addition to institution ID, also want to add a parameter called telephone ID, right? And so we want both of those things actually. And so part of what it's trying to say is, hey, what of this do you actually want to end up with? It could be neither, it could be one of, or it could be both, depending on what's going on. All it's really saying is, I know that you both tried to change this, what should I end up making this look like?
Okay, and then you have to pick one.
We don't necessarily have to pick one. You have to do something.
Yeah.
You have to change it to be what you actually want.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. All right. So now that you guys should all be in a good state on your branches, you should be able to get pushed to your branch, and then your branch will be up to date with master, and your merge requests shouldn't have the issues that they do.
You don't have to.
It's because of certain initiatives that are happening.
All right, and then, so those are the basics of Git. It's a relatively complicated thing, so I wanted to introduce it early. We will, at the beginning of each class, potentially even start a new project and go through this process again, just so that we get a lot of practice throughout the course of the semester. We will also probably, starting next class, start class with some small piece of JavaScript programming. And the reason for that is, again, that's the most complicated part of this class, and I want to start to introduce concepts as early as possible so that you can start to understand it, deal with it, work through the issues. We haven't really lost time, but this does push our schedule into a little bit of a weird spot. It already was because of the holiday, but just realize we're just going to keep going in order, ignore the week 1, day 1, day 2 thing, but we will continue working through in the same order other than those two pieces. So we'll have Git available to us, and we'll do a little bit of JavaScript each time. Okay. We're going to take a 10-minute break now, and then when we come back, we will talk through, I'm going to do a discussion on HTML semantics, semantic elements, and what that is, and how to use them, and why they exist. And then if we have any time left, we'll let you guys work on a couple projects, but we may not. We also probably won't get into any CSS today, unfortunately. But yep. Cool. Nice.
So how are we going to handle that last bit? Get it to do what you could right there.
Which?
So if Git push origin Sam or minus Josh.
It won't.
No, it's still coming out with like a bug modified message.
Okay, so yeah, so you, is that really true? So if you go back to Adam,
Yeah.
so the change has been resolved, so you still have to now git add and git commit, and then you can get push.
Yeah.
That's the process.
Send out check ahead out. Is there anything specific that we should be prepared for?
No, so it's that we're really going to start the topics that we intended to start today, or that we're on the schedule for today.
Okay.
So yeah, not really. I would read through the sections again, try to do those labs that exist there, just so you're a little bit ahead.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Thanks.
And so the rest of that, are we going through the stuff?
So that's where we're going now. Yeah.
Okay. I'll configure this stuff.
Okay.
Is that good?
That's, I mean, yeah, if you understand that stuff, it's actually, the semantics stuff is really not all that useful. I'll talk about why that is, but yeah. Yeah, but that's all we're going to be doing for this class. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
Right. I'm not going to get something.
Yeah, no, it's totally, absolutely.
So thanks for that. It was really useful.
Yeah, good, glad.
And awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. It really is. Like, this is something I think every industry should be using, even for drafts and versioning. And like, if you're working on a paper, like you can use Microsoft Word documents, you could do this. Like, there's tons of useful. But
I have a question, maybe or may not be related to this. Let's say we're all in our branches.
Yep.
Would I test the functionality in my code on my own before asking to merge?
Yep.
Or are you checking that as a part of the approval process? So if I were to build some code that the search functionality that you talked about,
Yep.
I want to be able to search users. Are you just looking at my code to make sure it looks good, or are you saying, oh, I want to see if this really works?
So there are different steps. In the code review piece that we did, I'm just looking to see if your code looks good.
Right.
But there are other quality checks that are typically done. So first is, as part of that pipeline, you generally set it up so that you can't merge into master unless all of the tests have passed, all the automated tests have passed,
Right.
which is like you can write code to test your code, which you guys have already seen, right? When you type learn, that's what's happening.
Right.
So make sure that all of that is green before it can be merged. So even if you get the approvals, it can't go in unless that happens. And then you could set it up so that you also have to get an official approval from like QA, who goes and actually looks at your code.
Right.
Maybe it's on, like you have to go to your URL / whatever the feature branch name is,
Yeah.
and check and make sure that things are working the way that they're
And
supposed
that's what I
to.
was going to say, can I push it into my test environment and
Yeah.
see if it's working?
Yeah.
And say, okay, all right, we're good now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or no,
I'm just trying to see if that's what like a lot of my SharePoint developers are doing. Like,
Yeah.
are they, when they're building, writing out code for different stuff,
Yeah,
are they
right.
doing it like that?
Yeah, which I don't know. Like maybe. Yeah, of course. And I'm actually not sure, honestly, with SharePoint stuff, like the extent to which it is code versus
C#.
it is C#. Yeah. So if they're doing C# stuff, they're probably doing something like this.
Yeah.
What I describe though is a relatively ideal scenario. A lot of times that's not how it works. A lot of times you're just merging in master.
And is this like applicable to like just regular JavaScript stuff too?
Oh yeah, everything, every type of code, and really every type of like text.
Right.
Anything really, even to, I mean, text is the easiest, but you could technically even do this with like images. You can, now the diff isn't as useful,
Right.
but you can see that there's a difference in the image, and it'll actually show you, like if you upload an image named icon and then you change that image to another one, it'll show you that you changed the image from, and it'll show you in the interface, it was this before and now it's this new thing.
Okay.
So yeah, it's useful for basically anything that you want to version, have code review against, have control over, that can be in a computer.
And then the GitHub side, I don't know if this is true, but I've seen people actually like look for the scenario that people have already written code to. Like,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
it's just like it's already on there, and they can just take it and kind of.
Yeah, so GitHub or GitLab have tons of code examples or open source projects or packages that you can actually pull down and use on your own.
Right.
That's why we create the video.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody's done it somewhere.
Yeah, over and over and over again. Yeah, well, then that's a nice thing too with GitHub. Now, usually the way that that works is you're hosting a package on GitHub, but you're actually making it a package that's available through something else. So in the case of Rails, they have a thing called Gem, which is a package manager. In the case of Mac OS, they have a thing called Brew. In the case of Linux, it's called apt-get. In the case of JavaScript, it's called npm. In the case of, like, it goes on and on and on. PHP is Composer, and Perl is, I forget. JavaScript is npm. Yeah. But then, so like, for example, JavaScript type ahead. So here, so this is npm jQuery type ahead. You can npm install jQuery type ahead. That makes the package available to you, but it also exists on GitHub most likely. So here it is. Yep, repository GitHub. So you can actually see the code is on GitHub, but you install it by doing npm install or whatever.
Kind of like the same way we installed that autocomplete.
Yep, yep, APM. Yep, so APM is for Atom, same concept. Sure. Yep, coding is 90% copy and paste.
Tech support is 100% I Google better.
Yeah, that's right.
Pizza, anyone?
Yes, please.
Yeah. I just had some. We had our draft today, so for fantasy football.
After you.
Such a gentleman.
Oh, really? It's been a fun day.
Oh, it was so great.
Yeah, of course. So now it's saying it wants it to be an ordered list. So it's saying your OL tag is missing, which is just yeah, I just don't know. I think it's. I don't remember. Try to change the first line more. 9, 10, and I'll have to change. So, I'm going to do that.
and change this URL to be okay. Yeah, I have to look at it closer. I can come back.
All right, so we're going to finish off today talking a little bit about semantic elements. Well, let's start with going back, because it's been a little while now. How do we start an HTML page? What does an HTML basic document look like?
Doc type,
First thing is doc type.
exclamation point.
Yep.
HTML,
Yep. And then
HTML,
give me one second. Syntax. Yeah. And then head. And what goes inside a head?
meta stuff.
Title,
Title, all the meta stuff. That's right. So title.
style sheets.
Yep, you would put your style sheet links in here. You put your source, your scripts for JavaScript, or you put your meta tag information for things like the UTF characters. Okay, so then what goes after head? And then what goes inside a body?
Header.
Yeah, whatever you want, right? It's whatever you want to do. Okay. So there's a couple of ways that you can write HTML. You could write all of HTML by using a div tag. A div tag is just a block element, it's called, which means that as you create each div, by default it puts it on top of each other. But you can then restyle them, which we'll get into when we get into CSS, so that they stay in line. So there's a div tag and there's a span tag. And the span tag, unlike a div tag, goes next to it. Just continues along. Okay. So you can completely structure everything with those two tags, right? You could put things next to each other and underneath of each other by just putting divs and spans in the right places.
I got a question for you, Sam.
Yep.
Let's say I went through my whole page, putting everything in a div.
Yep.
How would I know what CSS matches up to which div?
So we'll get into that next time probably. With the way that usually happens is using attributes. So you use classes and IDs, generally speaking, to associate each div with a particular piece of CSS. But today we're just gonna table it till Wednesday. But Monday. Yeah. Sorry.
So I was reading this in the lab, but I didn't quite understand what's the difference between using div and span?
Yeah, so it's literally, and I can show you. So let me go ahead and open this. So remember again from last time, if you create an index.html file, you can just double click on it and open up in your browser. So there it is. Right? So if I go back in here, I can create a span, first span. So I'll create a couple divs and spans. First div, first span, second span, third span, and I'll create some divs. First div, second div. And by the way, I mean, feel free, you can totally just play around like this, right? Like just put stuff onto the page, save it, refresh it, and show up. So, what's the difference between a span and a div? Spans go next to each other, divs go on top of each other. Okay. So that's it. I mean, and with this, you can imagine, technically, you can do everything with HTML. Like, it's just moving stuff around. There are some other attributes, obviously, like image or anchor, where you're creating links or you're creating image sources. But in terms of actually formatting the positioning of things on a page, This will do all of it. Right? Other elements, some of them, like P or H1 or H2, will do some things to change what the text looks like. Right? So an H1 is a big header text, P is paragraph text, caption will have smaller text, code gets put inside of a special, so we can do code. And then you could write like right, it looks slightly different, slightly different font, that type of thing. Okay, but for the most part, we can use div and span to put things into the right position. In HTML5, though, they came out with semantic representations, semantic elements. Well, all semantic elements are essentially divs, but they're meaningfully named. Okay, so it's just a div, but we are going to, instead of just calling everything a div, we're going to have a thing called header, which is where we're going to put our header information. Like maybe we put an H1 inside of there. And then there's another one that's called nav. And that's where we're going to put our navigation bar. And then there's another one called section, which is going to be just a section of text. And there's another one called footer, which is going to be our footer bar. And then there's a thing called aside, which is you know, things that we're just that it's not as relevant. It's an aside, right? It's stuff that's less meaningful. And if we
Footer doesn't have to be the last thing.
Nope.
Okay.
So literally all those things they're divs. They are divs and they should be treated as divs, and they're divs. That's all they are. The only reason for changing the term from div to footer or header or nav is so that when you're reading the code, because if you imagine like you're going to, as you build a website, have lots and lots of divs, it's a lot easier to understand that this section is my footer because it's in between two tags called footer. Does that make sense?
And so in HTML5, do we still use span?
So you can still use span and you can still use div. It is recommended that you use the semantic information, but as it turns out, the way that HTML ends up being rendered, you can name anything and it will be treated as a div. So I can just make up any element. So these are basically, the reality is semantic elements are just HTML5 conventions for how to name things to make it more readable so that people can understand what's going on. But I can just as easily create a SAM div. And it just works like a div. You can do whatever you want. What's interesting about that is in today's world, most people are building web components, which are essentially, you name an element whatever you want like that, or I would name it potentially like FME-accordion, and that div does something. Generally you're writing this in Angular or React or something that creates components, web components, but what it does is it says every time I see SAM, instead of relying on the browser to render it, I'm going to look at JavaScript code and that's going to tell me how to render myself. But then when you're writing the HTML, it becomes very semantic, very readable, because you know, oh, that's my accordion. Even though I don't see all the HTML for the accordion, I know my accordion is going to go there because the JavaScript is going to go put the accordion code inside of there. That'll become more clear as we get into JavaScript and we start messing with things. But the point is that semantic elements are just divs. They're useful only for readability, and that technically you can make any div with any name, so long as it's not something that's already taken. You can't make an image div because it's already taken. Okay, does that make sense? All right. So that is going to be it for the lecture today. I'm going to let you guys start working on some of the labs. You can work on them together if you want, separate if you want. It's up to you this time. Most of the time I'll make you work together, but today you can do whatever you want, and next time we will continue talking about HTML and we'll start to get into CSS. We'll do our first JavaScript lesson, mini lesson on Monday as well.
So just complete the rest of 2.
Yeah, try as much as you can to get through 2 for Monday. Really the expectation would only be that you got through the first half of 2, which is before CSS fundamentals. But try to get as far as you can, because the further along you get in the reading, etc., the more it's going to make sense when you come to class. Yeah.
Still got a question, so I'm on the CSS fundamentals now, and I'm in a little bit of trouble. So, so far, what I've gotten is better index, it's all the stuff, the CSS here is, again, this is what I've written so far.
Yeah.
Where I'm having problems, so I centered this and this, and they want, so I put the background on, and made that blue.
Yeah.
They want that centered as well. So when I'm trying to center it, nav A, I tried doing text align center, and that didn't work.
So yeah, a couple things. So nav A as a selector is referring to is referring to each of your anchor tags inside of your nav element.
Okay.
So it's referring to every one of those.
Right.
Right. And really what you want is for everything inside of nav to be centered.
Okay.
So the way to do that probably is, do you have a nav selector already? So just nav and not nav A.
I don't know.
So let's create one of those.
And then text line center.
That might work.
Okay.
You can try that. I think what's going to probably work is margin 0. And if it works on some of those, so of course,
Margin.
colon 0, auto 0. Command S also works like this.
Right.
Then if you refresh. Okay, so let's go back to your code. First of all, it is actually going to change it up. And it's already. You sure you don't have another nav? Just scroll up and down.
Yeah,
I just want to.
that's all of it.
Okay, cool. Okay, so try text align center. I might move it.
Okay.
So they're not just anchor tags. So if that doesn't work well.
There we go. So, just so I get the theory behind it. So, what I did here is I was CSS got like all of the individual
Yes.
anchor tags.
Correct.
So that's what. So all these individual anchor tags got that border and all that behind it.
Yeah, that's good.
But I wanted to move the entire nav over.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted a nav
That's right.
anchor.
Yeah.
Is it anchor? What's it called?
Element.
Element
Tag.
Okay, tag. Cool, great.
Yeah, that's
Perfect.
awesome.
Thank you.
Exactly right.
Awesome.